Welcome back to The Remote Life. My name is Han Talbot, also known as Han Meets World, and today we'll be chatting with Hannah Dixon. Currently based in Mexico, Hannah is a virtual assistant and freelancer business coach, recruiter, and the founder of Digital Nomad Kit, one of the largest and longest running VA training platforms, as well as Rainbow Remote, a community aimed at elevating LGBTQIA+ remote professionals. In this episode, we talk about Digital Nomad Kit and who it is for, creating a remote lifestyle that works for you, and some things people may not know about the remote and freelance lifestyle. So grab a coffee, a tea, or something stronger, and let's get started. Hannah, welcome to the Remote Life podcast. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing good. It took a little while to get us here, but we've made it. We made it. So let's just dive straight in. Tell us about you and your remote life journey so far.
Oof, what part of it? Sure. I have been remote for 17 years now. When I got started, I wasn't working online. I was more of like an analog nomad, I was doing work exchanges. I was working on farms and bars and hostels. I actually worked with husky dogs for a while in Austria. So I learned how to do mushing. So that was fun. And then travel was such a big part of my life, even as a kid. Like my mum was from the United States. I was a third culture kid. So I traveled a lot when I was young. So it was very inherent to me, like this kind of lifestyle. And then when I was actually 16, my art teacher said to me, "What are you going to do on the school holidays?" I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "You got a passport?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Why don't you go do like an interrail experience around Europe?" So that was my first like thing I did solo. I did it with a friend, but without my parents. And I was like, "Oh my God, I've got the bug now." So after school, I didn't go to university. I dropped out for personal reasons, but I started doing those work exchanges. It kind of just became my lifestyle. And I didn't see myself doing anything else but traveling, but I didn't see how to sustain that long term because you need money to a degree. And so I found myself in Italy on a work exchange there. I was working on a construction site and I had worked in fashion for 1 year before I traveled. And I had friends in Italy who worked in that company way back. And they invited me to a party in Milan and I rocked up with like plaster all over my clothes and like my boots were like literally bricks of cement. And she was like, "What are you going to wear?" I was like, "I don't have any money." So that's when I kind of was like, I'm going to go back to England and do what everyone's saying to me, go get a job, go back to school, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they're right. So I went back, I got a job in a bar for about 3 months, I think. And I met someone who worked online. And I was like, hang on a second. I don't care what she did. Like she was like SEO, web development. I was like, I don't even know what that means. I've been working on farms. I haven't even touched a laptop before in my life. But I was like, hang on, wait. Go back. You work from anywhere on your laptop. That's all I need to know. Tell me everything because this might be a really viable opportunity for me. And it was. So she did generously teach me as much as she knew. And that went on to me, learning from all the greats of the time, Amy Porterfield, Pat Flynn, all those kinds of people. And I started picking up little jobs here and there. I didn't really know there was a name for what I did. It wasn't until one of my clients referred to me on a team call as her virtual assistant. I was like, oh, there's a name for this. And then from there, it kind of snowballed. I learned about what a digital nomad was, all these kinds of things. And I was like, oh, there's like people doing this. This is like a thing, like an established thing. That was my start, very humble beginnings. My first gig was $5 on Elance, and I very quickly learned that wasn't the way to do things. And I started a Facebook group at that time because at that time, I don't know if you remember this, Han, but at that time, about 10, 15 years ago, well, it's actually 12 years ago exactly, about 12 years ago, if you searched the term digital nomad, there was a very distinct demographic that would show up, and that was it. It was, go ahead.
I was going to agree with you. I think, and it's still that sort of same image that we get now in like Canva and Adobe and all the rest of it. I feel you. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. No, all good. And so I was like, hang on a sec, I can't be only like queer person doing this. I can't be the only woman doing this. Where are the people of color at? Like, come on, where's the diversity? Yeah, it's not just white guys in Chiang Mai throwing out.
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I should clarify if anyone's here who hasn't actually been around in this space as long as we have. But yeah, typically the image that comes up when you would search digital nomad is a dude on his back, on a laptop, on the beach. And for anyone who's ever tried that and done it successfully, kudos to you, but logistically that doesn't work. Keep going with the story. I just want to clarify that.
No, good clarification. And so I started a Facebook group kind of just to try and attract like different people, and it grew really, really rapidly. And through that group, I was sharing my journey as a virtual assistant in there. And I think it was around the 6 to 8 month mark, I was making already $5,000 a month pretty consistently. And that seemed to be rare in the VA space. People were like, oh my God, like I'm not making anywhere near that. And not that it's about money, but that's a big factor for a lot of people. Of course, we work for money, right? And so people were saying, well, how are you getting these clients? Blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I don't know. Like, I think it was some of my experience when I worked in PR years ago in fashion. And I just seemed to have a natural flair for some things that were, online. And so I was like, let me throw together a free little course. And I still run that course to this day because the first time I ran it, I did it on the fly, like each day, like Monday, what would I do if I was just starting? Tuesday, what would I do next? And I kind of just did it intuitively. And at the end of the week, people were getting clients and I was like, this works. So that was the beginnings of what is now my company, Digital Nomad Kit, where we train virtual assistants and freelancers, and we also connect them with entrepreneurs who want to hire talent from all over the world ethically and intelligently. So we've trained, I think, just over 35,000 people now, and we are one of the go-to places for VA training. So that was like, congrats. From my $5 gig to that. And thank you. And I didn't intend on any of that happening. It wasn't like planned. It's just kind of like doors just started opening as I started opening myself up, So it was cool. It's cool. I like it.
It's cool. It's cool. It's all right.
It's all right.
Who is Digital Nomad Kit for specifically? How, would you say there's like kind of one profile person that you would say it's for?
So, little secret here. I've never really like niched or niched, however you want to say it. What I have done has been that I've just shown up very much as myself, unapologetically, like nothing holding back. And so I think naturally certain types of people are attracted to working with me. We have a lot of LGBTQIA plus folks in my community, a lot of neurodiverse people. But I'd say typically it's people who are looking for a way to work online and they really don't know where to start. And for me, I personally believe that virtual assistants and freelancers are really nice, low barrier to entry, but really high income potential opportunity for a lot of people. It varies, but generally it's people who are kind of a little bit like me.
I love that. That's amazing that you've created this sort of space like for people in that way. And no, I just wanted to ask because you've attracted your tribe at the end of the day, right? Like that sounds so corny, but you've attracted people like you. That's amazing. That's awesome.
That's what happens.
And like what better person to learn from than similar people to you. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you briefly talked about it when you were talking about how you put together your courses, but what would you say a typical day in the life looks like for you?
For me now, very, very different every day. I wouldn't say there's any day that would be the same as another. Depends. If I'm like in a launch period, it could be extra busy. I might be working 10 hours at my laptop, or today I'm doing this session here with you, and then I'm probably going to go for a hike for the next 3 hours and then maybe check in later. So it really, really varies. I tend to wake up when I want. I don't, have an alarm or anything like that. I typically sleep in. I'm not an early bird whatsoever. So maybe around 10 or 11, I'll start waking up, get myself some breakfast, take the dogs for a walk. I have a couple of rescue dogs since getting to Mexico, so they need attention. So I usually take them for a nice hike, and then I'll check in with work a little bit, maybe an hour or two. Then I'll relax a little bit, maybe an hour or two, and then I'm done. That's generally most days. But if it's a busy period, I could be at my laptop for a lot longer. It depends.
Sounds like you designed your life perfectly.
Well, no, hang on. What does your perfect day look like? Not your perfect day, but what do your days look like? Because I feel like it's so varied as nomads, right?
No, 1,000%. I ask because that's exactly it. It's called the Remote Life Podcast for a reason. It's not the Digital Nomad Podcast. It's not the Remote Work Podcast because the idea is that we're creating a remote life that is perfect for us, right? Yeah. Ultimately, it's not about not going into an office. It's not about having a day that looks like a traditional work day or work life or lifestyle. It's about having that flexibility to design the life that you want. So for some people that looks like waking up and doing their traditional 9 to 5, like traditional 9 to 5 routine, but just doing it remotely. But you kind of perfectly described what it means to essentially design your life, to live your life according to what you need. So that's why I say, that sounds perfect. And I would say that especially as someone who is currently still sort of traveling and I guess could still be classified as a digital nomad, for me, I develop more non-negotiables. I don't know if you've read The Artist's Way.
I have, yes.
Yeah, so you know about the whole non-negotiables versus a routine, and I've talked about this in other episodes as well, but it has, for me, it's always been more about having non-negotiables. So, starting the day sort of roughly at the same time, and then having a coffee before I get into the work day, and just sort of taking it a lot easier. I generally work in the morning and then we'll explore in the afternoon, but it never quite looks the same. I've now also kind of structured it so that I have Hand Meets Well remote life, remote creatives day on Monday, and then I'll work with other people in the week. So it's kind of like
Nice.
putting your own oxygen mask on first and
Yeah,
then helping. So
I love that.
it kind of evolves over the time as well. I think that's the beauty of it. It's not about having this one size fits all work routine for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's about what also works for you. And as you, I don't know, like me, take on more businesses, because why not? Or like if you start having a family, or you've got your dogs, as you mentioned. So I think for me, it was just like damn, this is what it looks like when you design your lifestyle, because that is it. That's what it means to live life according to your needs and what works for you.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said about putting on your own oxygen mask, because it's something I do too. So every Monday I call it my CEO day. That's like the day where I only focus on stuff
I
behind the
love
scenes.
that.
So it's like, maybe I'll make sure everybody who needs to get paid is paid. I'll make sure that I'm paid. I'll make sure that everything behind the scenes is good. And then I'll focus on like learning if there's something I want to be learning, or if there's someone I want to connect to. The rest of the week is like, whoever needs me can have me as they need me. But on the Monday, that's like my day, like do not disturb, behind the scenes, Hannah work. So I love that you do that too.
Oh my God. I love that you do that. That's great. I call it my creative day, just because pretty much all of it is blogs, podcasts, and content. But I love that we all make it work for ourselves. And it's just made such a big difference to how I then show up for other people throughout the week because of that. So, and even for myself at the end of the day, it's no, like, I feel like we're kind of wired to always think about other people first, but it's like, no, I'm showing up differently for myself too. Like, it's
totally
both ways.
Such a big change.
Yeah, no, I'd love to know if anyone else actually listening has a similar sort of setup, because I'm like, oh, there are other people who think like this. This is great. Is there anything else that you think people need to know about being a digital nomad and a freelancer, or a virtual assistant at all?
I mean, yeah, I think that it's easy to glamorize it, but there's also comes with a lot of hard work. And I think that I'm always very realistic about that. It's not for everybody. Some people will do better in a remote job, 100%. And some people will be more, attuned to doing something in the freelance realm. It really depends on the type of personality you have. If you like to work autonomously, if you like to work in a team, as a VA or a freelancer, you may be working in a team, but often it's you and a single entrepreneur, and then you'll be left to your own devices to get stuff done. And there are ways to sort of tackle things like loneliness and stuff. Like my community, for example, is a good example of that. But I don't think it's for everyone. I really don't think it's for everyone. And it is hard work. When you're getting started, yes, you could get a client out the gate, but it could take you a few months to get your first one in the bag. And then things start rolling. So I think one of the things I would say, if you're considering a career like this, is have a cushion, a financial cushion, and or somewhere to be living while you do this. I made the mistake of moving to Budapest. No, it wasn't a mistake. It had pros and cons. I moved to Budapest when I started my VA career. Even before I knew I was a VA, I was just kind of doing stuff for people, which was a good move because my rent was so inexpensive there at the time. I think I was paying 90 euros a month for my room, which was nothing. But it was the first weeks, like nothing was coming in. And so I remember I had already started the Facebook group, and that was growing independently of the VA stuff. And somebody said, I really want to meet with you. Like, I really want to meet with a digital nomad. And I was like, I've been doing this for not very long. And they were like very excited to meet me. And I couldn't meet them on time because I couldn't afford data on my phone to use the maps feature. So it would have been nice if I'd had a bit more of a cushion. So I would recommend having a cushion, an emergency fund of at least 3 months. You can, of course, with having the remote flexibility, you can position yourself somewhere where the cost of living may be a little bit lower. So you give yourself that head start, but have a cushion nonetheless, because you do not want to be trapped on the other side of the world somewhere not making any money and can't afford a flight home or wherever you need to be. So have a cushion, be realistic about the time frame. But then on the flip side, there's so many pros and benefits. I wouldn't be doing what I do if I didn't believe that and haven't seen that in the people that I worked with. So just be realistic about it, I think. And if it's something you want to do, know that it can be done, and know that it can be done in your way as well. I think that's another thing. People, they're like, oh, it didn't work for me, this thing that Hannah said or whoever said. And I'm like, well, then maybe adapt it a little bit. Like, there's not one way to the same outcome. You have to put yourself into it a little bit, and it's not plug and play. None of this freelance stuff is plug and play. I can give you all the tools in the world, but you have to wield them in your own very unique way.
That is such a good quote. I'm going to wield some weapons.
I don't know where that came from. I was impressed as it came out. When did I ever use the word wield? As I was saying, I'm like, is that how you pronounce that word?
You do indeed. But I love that. I was like, there it is. There's the quote I'm going to use. So good.
Boom.
That sounds like, yeah, Hannah 2024. That's so good. I like what you said also, though, about the fact that at the end of the day, it's not just about digital nomad life. It's the same with freelancing. I had the exact same thing when I went freelance 5 years ago. There is no one set route to doing freelance, right? You kind of always have to get very comfortable with the unknown very quickly, whether that is for the first time in your life, knowing that you've now got to file your own taxes, like you've got to find work in a whole different way.
Yeah.
You've got to work in a whole other way. You've got to, if you then choose to travel, like you've got to then bring all that into it. I think this is why we all kind of get a bit like, when we talk about the whole stereotype of a digital nomad 10 years ago, because again, like that's so far from where it is. It's like the tiniest maybe slice of what life as a digital nomad looks like. But ultimately, again, that's why I say to people, it's not about being able to work and travel necessarily. Like actually the underlying root is having that flexibility. And so if that flexibility is what you're after, then go for it. But like you said, it's not going to be easy, and that will evolve over time. What I was doing when I first started looks so different to what I'm doing now. But there is definitely experience from what I was doing 5 years ago that now gets applied to how I do things.
Exactly.
And I could have imagined what I was doing now would have been possible 5 years ago. So it's all these different things too that just change over time that people don't quite think about, I guess.
Absolutely.
Is there anything... Sorry. Yeah.
No. And just to add to that, we were talking just before you hit record about how your travels just keep getting extended. And I would say it's similar with our careers, right? It's like if you're open to change and you're open to doing things more flexibly, opportunities will present themselves, but you have to be open to them and knowing that it's not always going to be an easy road, but it's still a road and it's exciting.
Yeah. And again, with the exception of very few highways, have you ever really driven a road that is just straight continually? There's always something that happens.
Totally.
Oh, it's getting poetic now. Forget wielding weapons, they're getting super poetic. I'd be curious to know, is there anything you think is different from when you first started Digital Nomad Kit? Is there anything that has dramatically changed for you, whether that's work, life, business?
Let's cover each of those bases. Work, completely changed. I think that when I got started, it was very basic, of course. I was new to educating and not something I ever saw myself doing. So I've learned a lot. I've taken a lot of courses. I've done a lot of training. I've invested in bettering myself so that I can serve the people that come into my world better. And I would say that now I feel very proud of my outputs in that way. Now the program is extremely comprehensive, where before it was kind of bare bones, like here's a few things you can do. I guess everything's more polished now, and that will continually happen as I learn more and grow more as a person. Personally, I feel really, really detached from the culture of where I grew up now. At some point, something switched for me. I think it was probably around just before the pandemic. Actually, I've been away for so long now, and of course I visit home and I visit friends and family periodically, but it's got less and less over the years. They come to visit me now more. I'm like, hey, you can come see me now. I live abroad. I always have to come to you, come to me. So I think one of the things that changed, I used to always have this, like, what would you call it? I guess not homesickness, but like these pangs for, like, I would hear, like, you'll know about this, what is it, like garage music. I would hear garage music in a bar somewhere and be like, oh man, I miss going out in my hometown, or, I miss this or I miss that. And every time I would go back, and I hate to say this because it's not the people, but I'd always feel disappointed because I had this fantasy of like my hometown still. At some point that just like completely, I was like, no, I'm actually genuinely happier without those anymore. Like I've had those experiences. I don't need them anymore. If they happen, great, but I'm not like hungering for them anymore. So I do feel very detached from the culture. And now I actually realized that this summer I went back for my brother's wedding, which was fabulous. But I realized that I feel like I'm speaking a different language to the people there now. Obviously, I'm not. But I went back and it was like I was a tourist in my own country. And that was one of the first times I truly felt that. So I really do feel very detached from it and more observant of it. And I can actually appreciate some of the things that I didn't like that actually helped me make the move in the first place. So that's been a really interesting change for me. And my wife is German and she's always liked the idea of living in England. And I'm like, nope, not going to happen. Sorry. But we can go there and appreciate it and take trips and maybe do some road trips. Like I would like that now. I wouldn't have liked that a few years ago. So my relationship to my home country is very different now.
I was definitely in denial for a while. But I was like, oh no, but I'm sure I can go back. It'll be fine. And then I was like, and I had to kind of, I was literally in my sister's kitchen back in, I think it was like April or something. I had to, let's say, this is so hard for me to say, but I think I've been in denial for so long that I now that London doesn't fit for me anymore. Yeah. Which is where so much of my identity came from, so much of like what my personality was built off of. And yeah, it was 100% that. I went back into a few circles that I was in pre-pandemic and before I really took on the full-time remote lifestyle. And it was like talking to a wall, like not in a bad way. I don't mean that on other people, but it was. I've changed on the core so differently that I feel like I'm talking into a void right now. It was wild. And then when my sister was like, "Han, you've been saying this for years. Well done. Like, you've been saying this for ages." So I completely agree on that. And then you're kind of going, wait, so where do I belong?
Yeah, totally. Well, I've been thinking about that recently, and I think that what happens after some time is you realize that you're just this like magical makeup of all the things and places and experiences you've had. And I think I'm leaning into that. And I actually think I have a US passport as well, so I'm a US citizen because, as I mentioned, my mum's from the US. And so I've never really identified with that because I didn't necessarily grow up in the States. I spent most of my time in the UK. But as I've got older and now I'm in Mexico and, United States is right above me, I am taking more trips there. My business is set up there. I'm kind of feeling more aligned with that culturally lately, which is interesting. So I think we have this like such a unique opportunity to explore different parts of ourselves. And of course, that's just the citizenship. But beyond the citizenship, beyond the paperwork, we're able to explore different parts of different cultures that actually do align with us maybe a bit more. Like I definitely align with the US sort of desire for success, right? As toxic as that is, in parts, I think there's some parts of it that are really beneficial and do get people more success than maybe in the European counterparts who are a bit more blasé about stuff. So I've always been a bit more driven and I'm like, oh, I kind of identify with that thing. And then being here in Mexico, I'm like, I really enjoy my slow mornings and not worrying if the thing gets done tomorrow. So I think you can start to like piece together who you are through those travels without having to identify with one place or one culture. Like we are just this magical makeup of everything we experience. And I think it's extremely privileged to be able to do this and see all this and have these experiences because they open our minds in such a way that everything becomes easy in places. Like, I know this sounds weird, but when I go to a new country, I'm like, I'm not now afraid of like how to figure stuff out because I'm like, everything's foreign. And for me, that is home. So it's like, if everything's foreign, I'm in my element, like I know how to navigate stuff now. And so there's so many life skills that you gain from that as well. And I'm going on a long tangent now. Anyway, so many life skills that you gain from that. So for me, my identity is really wrapped up in like this mishmash of like something that's made me, it's the uniqueness that is me now.
I was thinking that, damn, that's another quote right there. That I think you touched on it so like beautifully because I think there are definitely a few more of us now that are also kind of saying, right now, okay, what is it that we want? What have we taken from these cultures? How do we then find more people who also think similarly in that sense? So again, as you said, we're not tied. We don't necessarily say that a location is our identity or like that's somehow linked, I guess. But it's sort of finding different community also that also feels similar. And there's sort of this, again, you put it so well. It's like this beautiful mishmash of all these identities that we made up. So I think there are more and more people that are feeling in that way too, as well. Which is why I was like, no, like more people need to be talking about this. It's not about hooking your identity to one location or one group necessarily, but it's about finding that home. There's a reason home is where my laptop is, right? Yeah. It's being able to find that sense of home wherever works best for you.
Yeah, totally.
So no, that was beautiful. And even down to like the skills, I was thinking, I put this on LinkedIn, that we need to almost talk more about the fact that travel is a soft skill.
Project management.
Yeah. When I did my study abroad, we came back and people were going, oh, you just did a whole like year-long holiday. And we were like, no, we were out in the real world doing stuff. And it's the same now with like digital nomading and remote life. Oh, like you were by the beach over the weekend. Yeah, but I've also figured out, say, the Mexican system of how to like run my life now. It's balancing all these different things that I never had to. And I'd rather employ someone like yourself, or I'd rather be dealing with somebody like that who has got that proactivity.
Yeah.
But anyway,
resourcefulness. I think travel makes people incredibly resourceful. Like you have to find how to get your needs met in any place.
Or like, knowing how to deal with things in an emergency situation, or there is just so much more to it.
Even being kind of astute to like the different cultural nuances for like why things aren't happening the way they should be happening, the way you think they should be happening. Because then when you start dropping all these shoulds, like everything's just like a delight. You're like, oh, that's interesting, instead of, oh, that's really annoying. And I think that's what changes like people who take vacations and people who do this as a lifestyle, because people who take vacations are more prone to like complaining, like the food was shit or this or that. Whereas if you're just used to everything being, you're like, huh, that's interesting. It's more of just a delight.
And I'll go find somewhere different tomorrow because I can.
Yeah, if it's not suiting me, that's fine as well. Yeah. Totally.
Whenever I do like blog posts on places like where to remote work from, sometimes I will include the not so good ones because, for example, say on Google or Instagram, you'll see people have gone, oh, but like, let's look at this amazing fruit bowl or whatever it is, and then you go and it's like not great service, or it took an hour to get your food or something. It's something like that. Yeah. So I sometimes will put that stuff in because people want to know that too. People want to have that perspective, and that's, I think, the unique opportunity that, say, someone like yourself and I can actually provide is we have the time to be able to go suss out what it really needs to be in this place.
Be a bit more observant about what's going on. Yeah, totally.
And then I also liked what you said about the fact that, you take on some of the sort of the American side of it. Would you say your heritage? Was that a right way of putting it? Yeah, you said your American.
I'm not sure what the word. Yeah, my background, I guess.
Yeah. Background, your American background. And I was thinking, okay, it's toxic if you apply too much of it. But actually, like,
you have the choice. Yeah.
Again, you take what you want from different places and different cultures, and you identify. Yeah. There are definitely certain parts of, say, Spanish culture and Brazilian culture that I take on more than some of my British traits and cultural vibes and communications, solely because, again, they resonate so much stronger with me. So I think we just have this. I agree. We have this unique opportunity to be able to sort of set a new precedent for how it means to build a culture, build a company, build a community because of this amazing experience that we've been able to have, for sure.
And actually, you just mentioned, I just want to say, because you just mentioned community, or I also want to say, because you said about, finding other people who think like that. And I think that working digitally provides this amazing experience to be able to connect with community in such a new way as well, where you really can meet people who think like you or who have had similar experiences to you or see the world through a particular lens. And so that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about my business, actually, is the community aspect of this. And I say I train VAs and blah, blah, blah. What I'm really doing is I'm curating this like interconnected global web of mutual support. And it's like all these people, wherever you land, every time I land in a new country, every time they go somewhere, I'm like, cool, I have a friend here. I don't have to have met them in person. It's like, I just have a friend here who I know intrinsically we're just going to get on. There's like no questions. And I think that's such a brilliant thing that we have, access to the digital world to be able to find those people now.
Completely agree. And if I kind of links into my other question I had for you, obviously you've been doing this for 17 years now. That's wild. Do you have any kind of lessons or experiences that particularly stick out for you as a remote lifer? Because would you call yourself a digital nomad still, or?
I don't know. I struggle with that term because I'm kind of more grounded here in Mexico, and I will be at least for the next year or two. I'm waiting to get the permanent residency, and then we'll probably head to Europe next. But to a degree, and my business is Digital Nomad Kit, so it's like, to a degree, of course. I wouldn't know what else to call myself. So maybe remote lifer works too. Things that have stood out, was that the question?
Yeah, so anything with sort of experiences, any lessons, maybe anything that you wish people knew, or anything that just stands out as an amazing moment for you?
Honestly, for me, it's every time I meet in person with my community members. That kind of like solidifies everything I'm doing. It gives power to everything I'm doing. It makes it all feel that much more real because, digital connections are great. But there is something about being in the flesh with people and being able to give them a hug and really feel their energy that way. So that's always been magical for me. Every time I've hosted a retreat or just a meetup or something like that, that's always really incredible. And then I think what I wish people knew, and something that I've always been a rebel since I was really young. Like if someone tells me this is the way it's done, I'm like, no, there's a better way. There's a different way. Started as a nomad. When I got started as a nomad, there was a lot of content about like how to be a nomad, and maybe there still is now, but if there is, I'm not engaging with those people. So that's cool. And you get to choose that. And one of the things that people were saying was like, oh, you have to do carry-on luggage, or you have to have the backpack, and you have to use this brand, and I was like, ew, I've got a herniated disc in my neck. I'm not going to walk around with a backpack. Like, what are you talking about? And then I did for a little while. I was like, this is horrendous. I don't want to be carrying my life on my back. And so I think it's a small thing, but it's giving to this like much bigger thing. It's like, do everything the way that you feel best to do. This whole lifestyle is about having the autonomy, the choice, everything we talked about earlier. And then you don't have to subscribe to anyone's way of doing it or doing some sort of remote life, whether it's the way that you work, the way that you live, the places you like to go to, the activities you like to engage in. I'm not actually, I don't like co-working spaces, but that's a big thing for a lot of remote work because like go to a co-working space, that's where you meet people. I'm like, nope, I'm going to pottery classes wherever I go. That's my thing. So I think it just really, really listen to your inner intuition, really listen to your own needs and own wants and what actually excites you, because you can easily fall into the trap of just like following, the crowd. And there is a crowd. There is a crowd of nomads that people follow. There is. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're feeling like something's off, know that you can change it. Know that you can adapt it. Know that this type of lifestyle doesn't look any one way, so you can make it yours. And it doesn't mean it's not for you if you've like dipped your toes in because a few people recommended stuff that you didn't like it. You can change it to be exactly how you want it to be. And, I don't actually hang out with any people that work remotely in this town that I live in. Like I'm hanging out with expats and old ladies and like... I like that. And then when I want that fix of like meeting entrepreneurs and stuff, I'll go to an event. So again, just, do you, always do you, and question everything and just do you, because that's what I've done every step. And that's how I think I've been able to enjoy this for so long and make it sustainable, because I've done it my way and I've adapted it as I've adapted as a person as well. Does that make sense? That was a long answer.
Was that another podcast quote in there? So many sound bites. Love it. I think that's so true. I agree that like the little old ladies in town always have the best stories. They're wonderful. I think we all do it. Maybe we'll start doing it one way, but then we sort of start leaning into different ways that we want to do it that fits for us as well. So no, I completely agree. It's about as we keep saying, it's about making it work for yourself. 100%.
Yeah. 100%. Question for you. I'm curious. Have you experienced over the years? Have you experienced FOMO? Because I think that's something that a lot of people in the space do experience. And how do you manage it if you do get that?
That is a very good question. So what comes to mind for me, I guess, is the fact that in my 20s, I had a hell of a lot of energy to go do all the events, to watch all the things, to read all the books, to travel all the places that somehow came across my calendar from like 2018, not that long ago. And I was in like 3 different cities in 1 week very often during that year. I don't advise it. I don't know how I managed it other than just I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I was kind of able to do a lot anyway because I had the energy. And I sort of am not too far off that now. But it's more that I have to strategize better because I'm a very full send or nothing kind of person. And as you get older, you have to manage it a lot better. I guess now the way I manage it is that I will be very intentional about it. Because again, I like to give my energy or I do nothing. Again, there's no in between. So if I have an event come up, I'll go, okay, why do I want to go? Am I going because I have FOMO, or am I going because I want to do a talk, or I want to meet with certain people, or I want to be around people? Because sometimes you just want to go to an event to be around people. And I guess I manage it. Okay, am I going to this destination because people keep saying it's the best destination for a digital nomad or whatever? Or am I going because I actually want to go? So it's just having a much more intentional conversation with myself now, because I find that if in my gut I'm thinking go, then I go. If my gut says don't go, and then I still go, more often than not, I regret going. So I think just being a hell of a lot more mindful. I think that's how I manage it, because I used to do all the things that I could, and that was fine. But now recovering from the travel, recovering from the events, everything is a lot more, especially when you've got business. You know this, when you've got businesses, especially, you have to be so much more mindful of how you're expending your energy. So I think that's how it is. It's just being intentional with my reasons for doing things. Am I going because I feel FOMO, or am I going because actually this could be beneficial to me, whether on a social, business, whatever level? I love that. What about you?
No, similar. Just taking that moment to ask that question. I think that's really important for everyone to do with anything in life, but especially, so I would say sometimes I still slip into maybe making more plans than I should because I know my energy levels, but I'm also a recovering people pleaser. So if someone invites me, someone who's really excited, I'm like,
welcome to the club.
So that sometimes is hard, but this 2.5 month stint I have coming up, I'm doing like a speaking tour and an event thing, and it's going to be fun. And I already know I've overpromised on a bit of it. So I already know that, and I will try to not make that mistake again. But I get just so excited. I get very like hyped up about stuff. And then the next week I'm like, I'm really tired and depressed and don't want to go anywhere or see anybody. I hate everybody. And then I'm like, man, now I have to go.
But yeah,
for the most part, I am able to take that moment that you're talking about where you ask the questions about if it's really something you want to do. But the people pleaser in me still struggles sometimes, honestly.
And that's okay. We're human. Again, it's about honing in what works for you, because God, it's going to sound so corny, but because even if you go and you're not even sure, like, that's a lesson learned, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah. And that's the freedom that we have to do that. At least we have the time and the flexibility to be able to do. Before we do the last question, do you want to share with people where you're going to be for the next couple months? Speaking of events and things.
I'm going to be at Nomad World Summit in, I can never say the name of that city, in the Algarve.
Albufeira.
What she said. I'm like, Albufuria. My friend's like, that's not how you say it. I'm like, leave me alone. So I'm just like, I'm going to be in the Algarve. So I'll be there. I'll be speaking there on a panel and doing a talk there. And then also some of my community members are there. So I'm very excited to meet them. After that, I'll be sticking around the Algarve. My mum's 60th birthday. We're doing like a fancy villa week there. Then I'm heading to Bangkok, which is my favorite city in the entire world. It gives me, so, while I'm saying this whole tour is like I overextended, I also made space for like, let's go hang out in my favorite city as much as possible while I'm on this tour, because I want to give that to myself. So I'm going to be there for a while. I'm going to be going to the Extraordinary Travel Fest in Bangkok, which I'm extremely excited for. It's a new one. It's a little bit outside the type of events I would normally go to, but I'm curious. It's about like people who do like crazy, like extreme travel, which I don't, but I like to hear those stories sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you have this, but when I finally commit to making travel plans, it just seems like lots of friends just tend to just align. So there's like going to be a bunch of us in Bangkok. So I'm super excited for that. And then I'm supposed to head over to the Philippines. I'm not sure yet if that's going to happen, but I'll be in Manila. Probably will happen, at least for a week. And then after that, I'm heading back to Madeira for Nomad Island Fest, where I'm also speaking and also hosting my VAcation, which is a vacation for VAs and freelancers, in tandem with that event. So if you're a VA or a freelancer who wants some time off in good company, check that out. So that's where I'll be. And then I'm heading back here, Guanajuato, where I've just got a new house, and I'm going to relax for a few months here.
Why do I not believe you about the relaxing part?
Yeah, we'll see. There's already an event in February, but that's quick. It's just in the States. It's a quick hop, right?
That's funny. I love that. I'm definitely curious about some of those events, and hopefully we'll either see each other in either Thailand or Philippines. So fingers crossed for that one. But no, final question. Fill in the blank. Home is where?
I'm all out of sound bites. Can it be cheesy?
Obviously. Of course.
Home is wherever my dogs are.
It's where where your dogs are. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Hannah, it's been amazing to finally have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful to connect with you finally as well.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Remote Life. And thank you, Hannah, for taking the time to speak with us. You can find links to Hannah's profiles below. Thank you so much again for listening, and we can't wait to remote work with you again soon.